certainly something we look at for all of our teams every year, as well as obviously, as you mentioned, the expansion teams. I think my comments on the expansion teams were you want to make sure the expansion owners know when they're coming into this league, it's a competitive league. Free agency is competitive now. And you know, all of our owners are investing. You see investing in practice facilities and other player experience. And I think we want. All right, great. Welcome to game one of the WNBA finals. I'm excited to be here in New York City. The Liberty take on the Minnesota Lynx. As you all know, the Liberty and Lynx were the two best teams in the WNBA all year, with both at the top of the standings for much of the season. The Liberty, one of the league's original franchises, are making their second straight finals appearance and looking to win their first title, WNBA championship title. Obviously, they won the Commissioner Cup the other year. But the Lynx, one of the most decorated franchises in WNBA history, are looking to win a league record 5th title and appearing in a record 7th finals. And they're looking to become the second team to sweep both the Commissioner Cup and the WNBA Finals trophy. So with Nafisa having such a career year, along with the great play in New York with Sabrina and Stewie and the storylines around Leonie Fibich, her first year in the league, all rookie team and free agency signings in Minnesota with Courtney Williams and Atlanta Smith, and so many more storylines. I'm just excited to get this tipped off. And, you know, the finals mark the culmination of what I think is the most transformational year in the WNBA's history. You saw all the statistics we put out: viewership, attendance, merch sales, digital engagement, at or near record levels. And to put it in perspective with a few stats that bring insight into what has happened, the WNBA significantly outpaced the industry in average consumption of live games in 2024. Fans watched 30% more minutes on average of each WNBA game in the 2024 regular season. Our games reached a record 54 million viewers in the 2024 regular season. Younger, more diverse audiences are imperative to the growth of the sports industry, and they flocked to the WNBA this season. Viewership by fans under 35 increased 211%, led by a 259% increase in viewership from Gen Z and millennial women. Our focus on our direct-to-consumer platforms led to record-breaking content consumption and repeated fan engagement. WNBA app downloads surpassed 1 million this year, and monthly active users skyrocketed 252%. Social engagement increased nearly 300% across all of our league channels, and there was an astounding 872% increase in WNBA app story views, which I know I watch my kids watching all the little stories that we put out there. So last time we gathered for the finals in 2023, we had just announced the Golden State expansion franchise. Since then, we have announced 2 more expansion teams to begin play in 2026, Toronto and Portland, with 1 more team to begin play by no later than the 2028 season to get us to 16 teams. This summer, we signed a groundbreaking media rights deal that will grow the economics of our league and expand the reach and accessibility of our game for our fans, with additional WNBA media deals to come. And as you know, early in the season, after seeing the growth trajectory we were on and with a challenging game footprint given the Olympics, we implemented full charter flights for the entire season plus playoffs. This growth has not come without growing pains. The hateful speech and threats directed at our players are troubling. That type of conduct is not representative of the WNBA's character or fan base. As a league, we stand united in condemning racism and all forms of hate. The WNBA is one of the most inclusive and diverse professional sports leagues in the world, and we will continue to champion those values. We will meet with the Players Association, the players, teams. We'll work together to expand and enhance our efforts and are going to approach this multidimensionally, utilizing technology, prioritizing mental health, reinforcing physical security, and increasing monitoring. We know there's more work to be done, and as a league, we are fully committed to listening to the players and other stakeholders on this and other important issues. And finally, before we get to your questions, we have some news to announce. Starting next year with the 2025 WNBA season, the WNBA finals presented by YouTube TV will be a best of 7 format.
Yes.
replacing the current best of 5 format. The finals will take on a 2-2-1-1-1 structure in which the team with the higher seed will host games 1, 2, 5, and 7, and its opponents will host games 3, 4, and 6. This will give our fans a championship series format that they are accustomed to seeing in other sports. We will also be changing our first round to a 1-1-1 setup for the best of 3 series. We have contemplated both these changes since the pandemic, and we would have done it in the current year, but with the Olympic break this year, it wasn't possible. But now that we have charter throughout the season and playoffs, it's feasible. So to summarize, in 2025, we will have a best of 3 first round, 5 in the semifinals, and 7 in the WNBA finals. So in addition, the 2025 regular season will increase from 40 to 44 games per team. And honestly, the league's growth and increased demand for WNBA basketball make this the ideal time to expand the schedule, lengthen the finals, and provide fans more opportunities to see the best players in the world compete at the highest level. I also want to take the opportunity to let you know that the WNBA Draft Lottery 2025, presented by State Farm, will be broadcast on Sunday, November 17th at 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. With that, I want to thank you for your coverage this year. It really has made a difference. So I'm really very grateful to be standing here as the commissioner of a league that has been through so much, and to have you all in this room and reporting on this league as you have all year. Very grateful for that. So with that, happy to answer any questions. Ron, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Cathy. We're going to begin with our first 3 questions. We'll come from the front row to your left.
Hey, Cathy, Doug Farnwork at the Associated Press. I'm glad to hear the playoffs are expanding next year. It's good for everybody, I think.
You saw a big smile on my face, didn't you?
I did, yes. And I'm sure that people out there will have equally big smiles when they hear the news. If I could take you to a little bit what you said about the racism and sexism and the issues that this league faced this year. It's not a simple answer for you guys. What can you tangibly do? Because a lot of it's online trolls that hide behind a keyboard as opposed to literally going and seeing someone saying something in the stands, which I know may have happened as well. But what could you guys do to help the players, the league, not have to deal with as much as they've dealt with this year, it seems, more than any other year?
Yeah, first of all, there's no place in sports for this. It just, continue to condemn it, continue to be a voice on this. Also, I mean, I think we have been already meeting with some technology providers. I think there are some technology solutions out there that we could deploy and employ. Of course, we want to meet with the players and see what they want to do around that. But there are some technology companies we've been meeting with to see what we can do. And it just is something where we have to continue to be a voice for this, a voice against it, condemning it, and making sure that we find every opportunity to support our players who have been dealing with this for much longer than this year, by the way. And I think Sue Bird said that the other day very eloquently. And we need to continue to see how we can support the mental health resources, physical security, cybersecurity. So we're going to attack it, as I said, multidimensionally, and we're going to try to figure out how we can best work with the players as to how they want us to help solve this issue.
Staying in the front row center.
Yeah, Commissioner Michael Vopel, ESPN.com. With the expansion of the playoffs and 44 games, can you tell us maybe a little bit of what you guys have thought in terms of the parameters of the season? And does it start a little earlier, go a little later? And even if there's different things like the back-to-back games and cities that you do to try to help with the compression of the schedule and travel?
Yeah, well, next year we do not have any international competitions, so no FIBA World Cup and no Olympic break. So we should have a nice footprint. It's hard to start much earlier because we obviously have the college season. The college draft is such a great feeder system into the WNBA and creates a lot of excitement, as you've seen over the past few years and probably since the league started. So I think probably not starting much earlier. Certainly, we're well into October, by the time we finish finals, especially if we go to 5 games this year and next year 7. So we'll go a little later, probably in October. But again, we'll have a decent footprint next year to fit in the 44. Remember, we have an additional team joining next year as well in Golden State Valkyries. And so I think it'll be great. We'll have obviously the condensed Commissioner's Cup few weeks culminating in that championship as well. So I think next year will be a good footprint. We'll have to look the following year because that is a FIBA World Cup year. And then obviously we'll be good in 27, and then 28 will be LA 28. So it's a constant balancing of the schedule, Michael. And I think, we feel really good about where we'll be next year for sure on the footprint.
Next question, front row center.
Hi, Cathy. Emily Adler from The Next. Given, as you announced, the date of the draft coming up in just a month, and we haven't gotten specifics yet, do you believe that an expansion team should have the opportunity to be involved in the draft lottery?
So, so that date in November was draft lottery, not the draft. Yes. So the Golden State Valkyries will pick 5th in each round. So the lottery picks will be the 4 that you probably already have done the calculations on, but we'll obviously put a release out after this press conference on exactly that. And then that the Golden State Valkyries will have the 5th pick in each round.
The next question, second row to your right center.
Hi, Cathy. You've said that globalization of the game is for you now that you've checked off most of expansion and charters. I wondered, what does that mean to you? Do you think that the prioritization rule needs to be revisited? Should the W be playing preseason games internationally in places besides Toronto? What does it look like?
So it's a good question on what's next as it relates to our globalization platform. Obviously, we played Toronto, we played in Edmonton. That was kind of our Canada series. Now we'll have a team in Toronto starting in 26. Yeah, sure. We'd like to play in more places, EMEA, longer term Asia, Africa, certainly Latin and South America. I know Mexico City has shown interest, as well as a variety of other cities across the world. Obviously, I was in Paris for the Olympics this year. Thought it was amazing, the support for women's basketball there. Never forget on the Friday night when Belgium played France in the women's game. I mean, I'd say that was the best crowd that I saw watch a game there. Obviously, a lot of Belgians could drive there to Paris. So it was great to see the growth of the game globally. And I think our players represent such great role models and to those communities and lifting women. I've admired what the NBA has done with their global games platform, playing around the world. And I think we'll be on a path there as we get into 2025 and beyond. Well, that'll be something I'm sure in collective bargaining that we'll sit down with the players and Players Association. I think one thing that you noticed in the last year or two, particularly this year, a lot of our veterans were in camp, training camp. Obviously, they have to show up by May 1. And I think it was important. I think you saw the quality of the game in the first few weeks because of that. And I also think you saw the quality of the Commissioner Cup play, which is towards the front half of the season, to give that some more relevance. So again, I'm sure it'll be something we continue to discuss and talk about.
Cathy, staying in the second row, center.
Hi, Jackie, or hi, Cathy.
Exactly.
My mind's moving quickly. Jackie Powell, The Next. To build off the question about prioritization, I'm just curious what you know about how some of these international club teams have adapted to prioritization, and particular what's gone on in Turkey.
Yeah. So again, we work with FIBA, we work with, we're working with all the constituents on how we can make this all work, where they can have, vibrant competitive seasons. We can have our vibrant competitive season. Obviously, some have moved their dates to end earlier to make sure that those vets, remember, our prioritization rule does not apply to rookies in their first couple of years. But for those vets to come over and play in the best league in the world. So, but, we have a good relationship with FIBA, working through with them. And again, I think in 2025, that's another impediment to starting earlier, to the question earlier about starting earlier, not only the college draft and college season going into the beginning of April, we need to have a training camp, but also the Euro leagues as well play into April now, into May. So I think on balance, I think we all want to grow the game globally. And I think it's going to come down to, footprints and seasons and how we can do it, which is why most of what we're doing and expanding our season will be on the back end.
Cathy, next question, second row, all the way to the left.
Hi, Cathy. Sabrina Merchant, The Athletic. With the potential opt-out date coming up for the CBA, do you expect the Players Association to opt out? And have you been discussing with owners the prospect of that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always scenario planning around a variety of different outcomes. And certainly I engage with NECA and Terry throughout the year, every month, every other week during the season. And I think really respect the player leadership. And I think this is going to be an opportunity to listen to one another and take this league to the next level for generations to come. So I look forward to building the future of the league and sitting down with the players, whether they opt out, not opt out. But I suspect that given the transformation of the league that we've been working so hard on building this long-term economic model, we've already returned to the players through charter, through increasing playoff bonuses a couple of years ago by over 50%. So we'll continue to do that. And then when we get to the bargaining table, we'll continue to talk about the issues that are most important to the players. So we actually look forward to engaging in that now that we've kind of gotten the media deal we discussed, corporate partners, just everything. There's virtually not a sporting event you can turn on where one of our players is not in an ad spot. That was not happening 5 years ago. And, look at Aaliyah Boston and, Sabrina and Asia and so many of our players in these ad spots. And I think that's a good sign too, as we think about the future of this game and the future of, the agreement between the Players Association and the owners.
Staying on the left side of the room, row 3.
Hi, Cathy. Emma Bachelari with Sports Illustrated. With the increased attention this year, there's also been increased scrutiny about the quality of refereeing. Curious if there has been any conversation about whether it's referee pay, referee training, anything to ensure that is as good as it can be.
Yeah, and the one thing as a very long-term sports fan I know is that officiating and refereeing is always at the top of a fan's list, of the media's list. Obviously, we work hard on training. We work hard on consistency. Obviously, not every, they're humans, looking at technology. Basketball is a little more complex than tennis, for instance, around technology of officiating. So we're looking at a variety of different dimensions, but we'll continue training. We have a lot of veteran officials. You'll see them out here working the finals. But we always know there's always work to do, always get better. We review in our competition committee meetings, officiating and points of emphasis and things like that. We'll caucus with Bethany Donovan, our head of league operations, and our referee operations as well. And we'll caucus to make sure we're putting out the best officiating we can. But I know it's a passionate issue. Every fan group, I love when I go into market and every fan group I meet with, they usually wait and ask it as the last question of the night, but they do ask about officiating, which I appreciate the passion for that.
Kathy, second row to your left.
Hey, Cathy, Ben Pickman from The Athletic. In the most recent NBA CBA, NBA players were granted the ability to invest in WNBA teams. A kind of two-part question. One, have any NBA players invested in any WNBA franchise or at least expressed interest to you in, acquiring a stake in a franchise? And the second part of that is Unrivaled is obviously providing equity stakes to players participating. Is that something that WNBA would ever consider, granting active players an equity stake?
So on your first question, we do hear from NBA players who are very interested in investing in WNBA teams. There's a lot of capital inflows coming into women's sports, as many of you are hearing and reading. And obviously we were one of the first and only to raise at the scale we did, $75 million back in 2022. And we brought in former NBA players into that capital raise and former WNBA players into that capital raise. So yes, we do get interest from time to time. Now the NBA investments by those players is in independent teams, not an NBA affiliated team. So if you're still playing for an NBA team, you probably want to invest in the WNBA team with your affiliate, and you can't do that until you graduate, I'll call it, or retire from basketball. So we have a lot of interest from that perspective. And then again, we want to listen to the players as to how they want to think about anything that we go to the bargaining table on, and whether that's equity stakes or other issues that they might be interested in. We're certainly willing to listen. I think it is complicated when you have a players association versus the league versus the owners, who are all small businesses, right? We'll have 13, now we'll have 15 to 16, and they're each individual businesses. So I think it's a little more complicated because there's no one equity stake like in an Unrivaled. It's one league. It's just equity stake in there. It's not teams. We've got 12 to soon to be 16 teams and a league. So so it's a little more complicated, I think.
Kathy, fourth row in the center.
Hi, Cathy. Maitri Anantharaman from Defector. At some of the recent expansion announcements, you've detailed the commitments that these ownership groups are making in their teams. And I think in doing so, just implicitly set the standard, set what the new standard is for what it takes to be a WNBA owner. And it seems like that standard is higher than it ever has been, for obvious reasons. To the point where I wonder if certain existing ownership groups do not meet that standard, and if they hypothetically came to you and described their current situation, but did so as an expansion bid, maybe they would not be awarded a team. You've said that, like, the free agent market, some of that stuff will just incentivize owners to invest, but is there ever a point where the league would step in and mandate certain facility requirements or arena availability requirements, and even things that maybe would be less on the player experience side, like staffing, business side staffing, front office staffing?
Yeah, it's certainly something we look at for all of our teams every year, as well as obviously, as you mentioned, the expansion teams. I think my comments on the expansion teams were, you want to make sure the expansion owners know when they're coming into this league, it's a competitive league. Free agency is competitive now. And you know, all of our owners are investing. You see investing in practice facilities and other player experience. And I think we want those expansion teams to come in and be the most successful they can. And I think, you know, you may have a different view, but I think our current owners are all rowing in the same direction as far as how they know they need to get free agencies to build a championship squad. And you know, obviously great rookies too, who become veterans later on. So I don't have a bias against any one team. Obviously, we have teams playing in different size arenas, and you saw some teams upgrade those arenas for certain games this year. And I thought that was a sign and signal that as attendance has grown across the league, that we can play in bigger arenas. I think when I came into this league, someone said you should all be playing in 5,000 seat arenas. Can you imagine what you're going to see out here tonight? If that was in a 5,000 seat arena, you know, no, there's going to be 17,000 plus people here. So, and we had our highest attended game ever, over 20,000 in Washington this year. So, so I think we do have standards, by the way, across the board for facilities, practice facilities and things like that. But those are all, I mean, the owners are now know that there's an edge to showing a player investment in, you know, the things like facilities, et cetera, and especially practice facilities. I was in Phoenix for the All-Star game this year, taking a tour of their new practice facility as they opened it. Vegas has done it. Seattle's done it. Dallas is going to do it. I think Phoenix, I mentioned, and Chicago is looking at upgrading. So I think all of our, and we already have some great practice facilities already in the league, in Indy and Minnesota, et cetera, and here in New York. So I think, again, there's no, that we do have standards, but there's nothing where we're saying any one owner is not up to those standards today.
All right, we have time for two more questions. We're going to have one more from the room, and then we'll go to Zoom for the last question. Cathy, next question to your right in the front row.
Hi, Commissioner. Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer. So last month, the 76ers said on the record that they have been engaged with the league on the process of bringing an expansion team to Philadelphia. I was hoping you'd say whether that's true. And I realize I've asked you similar questions before, but I was hoping that you, since they've said something, if you'd say whether that's true, and if it is or isn't, by when do they have to have everything tied up, done, sealed, given the arena situation that they have? If 28 is when that expansion might stop after that for a while, when working backwards from that, does everything have to be done and sealed by?
Yeah, so just in general for the 16th spot, as I've mentioned, the good news is we have a lot of demand from many cities. I'd say 10 or so, maybe even plus at this point, because I think the more people are watching the WNBA and seeing what we're growing here and seeing these players and the product on the court, more people are interested in having it in their cities. They see the economic impact of having a WNBA team in their city, the role model in the community these players represent. So I've said Philly is on the list, and Philly is on the list. We're not, now that we have the 3 teams, 2 in 26, 1 next year, we're not in a huge rush. We'd like to bring it in 27 or no later than 28, as I mentioned. And so I'd say there's 10 to 12 cities that are very viable that we're evaluating, and we have a process. And I'd say, I don't have a deadline by which we have to name it because it'll be out to 27 or 28, but I would think in the next couple months or so, we'll start, now as we get into the off season, we'll start taking a look at those that, you know, have gone to the, we'll go to the top of the list through our process. And again, it's all the same types of things I've been talking about for the other three around arena, practice facility, player experience, committed long-term ownership group, city, demographics, psychographics, Fortune 500 companies based there, all the things we've been looking at in all of our cities in our data analysis. And then we've built some good relationships with some of the potential cities as they've started to engage with the league on an expansion team.
All right, for our last question, we will turn to Zoom and we're going to go to Minnesota and Charles Holman. Charles, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioner Charles Holman, Minnesota Spokes Reporter. I wish I was there, but I'm there in spirit. Thank you for taking my question. As you know that we are a majority Black women's league, and at this point, there's only one Black head coach. I'm also asking if there's any strong consideration for a Black-led ownership group for the last expansion team when you go award one.
Yeah, I think if you look at the diversity of when we did our capital raise, you'll see a fair amount of diversity in the ownership group we brought in there, investor group. Obviously, we talk with our owners all the time about diversity in the coaching ranks, in their front office, back office, et cetera. You see every year we score very well in our report on that. We have a lot of assistant coaches that have been previous WNBA players and represent a very diverse group as well. We have all of our owners and partnering with minority-owned businesses. We're partnering at the league with Mael, was one of our newer partners, Playa Society. I think one of our teams just got Partake Foods, Jersey Patch, that's a minority-owned businesses. So we're looking at it from all these angles, partnerships, ranks of our employee base, and certainly the coaching, diversity in coaching as well. So it is important to us, and there's not a Board of Governors meeting that we don't talk about this. And as you know, we've made enormous progress, especially in the assistant coaching ranks with former WNBA players by, essentially focusing on this over the last couple of years and made enormous progress, which is why our report card is really good. But it's something that you can never rest on, Charles. So I appreciate the question, but and obviously we've had a couple coaches exited. So I think we have 3 open coaching spots. Obviously the Golden State Valkyries announced their first head coach in their franchise history today. And we have 3 open coaching spots. So we'll certainly be looking for our owners to have a diverse pool of candidates, and ultimately, they'll make the decision on their head coaches.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the finals. Thank you.
To our media, that concludes our press conference. A reminder, this will be the room for the post-game interviews with both head